So in this video, we are So in this video, we are going to discuss about the geography and internal security challenges related topics that were news in this week. So first topic is related to the southwest monsoon. Now, as per the Indian Meteorological Department, the southwest monsoon has made early onset in the Andaman and Nicobar Island. As you know that Andaman Nicobar Island territory of India is where southwest monsoon reaches first. So as per the IMD's report, it was 16th May 2026 when it has already arrived, and large part of the monsoon wind systems and the cloud systems have covered Andaman Sea and Bay of Bengal as such. It is expected that in Kerala, if we talk about the mainland India, if you look at this mainland India, Kerala is the first state where the southwest monsoon enters. So the expected date basically every year is about 1st of June, but this year it is believed that monsoon may enter Kerala on 26th of May. That means this year monsoon would be earlier than normal. And in the case of last year, if you look, monsoon was delayed by almost a week. This year it is kind of having early onset. So overall, we have to understand that the southwest monsoon does not arrive every year on a single date. It changes its date, it varies its date year on year basis. If you look at some of the previous examples, in the year 2025, 2024, 2022, we have seen the early onset. 2023 and 2021, if you look, we had the delayed onset. While in 2020, we had the normal onset. Normal onset means 1st of June, right? Whenever we are talking about delayed onset, early onset, it's not that they're delayed or early by 2 week, 3 week, or 4 week. It is almost, we can say, 7 days, right? Between 1 to 7 days. Whenever there is early onset, whenever there is a delayed onset, in most of cases, this is between 1 to 7 days. And overall, if you look at the pattern, right? If you look at the last 6-7 years, we can see that the variability has continuously increased in the terms of the arrival of monsoon and the classes we have discussed. It is also directly linked with the subtropical westerly jet stream. As soon as the subtropical westerly jet stream withdraws from India and goes to the north of Himalayas, the monsoon is expected to enter India as such. And all the changes we are witnessing here is directly linked with the climate linked fluctuations we are witnessing, the effect of global warming, if you look what we are witnessing here. And to some extent, it is also linked with the overall changing temperature, such as El Nino and all that in the Pacific Ocean. Now, if you look at the entire southwest monsoon, in this map, you can see that 1st of June is expected date, right? However, this year it is about to enter on 26th of May itself. And then the monsoon, southwest monsoon, gradually enters from Kerala. They keep moving to the north, and by the 13th of July, they completely covered the entire upper part or northern part of India as such. So it takes almost, we can say, 1.5 months for monsoon winds to enter Kerala and reach the northern part of India. And this is for the entire country is considered the main rainfall season. Majority of the rainfall, the annual rainfall, if you consider, is received during the southwest monsoon. And this is very vital for the Indian agriculture also, because almost we can say 55 to 60% of India's farmland still are directly dependent on the rainfall they receive to the southwest monsoon. The irrigation infrastructure, the man-made this irrigation system are providing supply to very less percentage of the agriculture field. Next, it is also crucial for water resources, because whenever you have heavy rainfall, whether it is the peninsular India or the northern India, in the peninsular India, this rainfall through southwest monsoon is helpful in filling the tanks, reservoirs, which can be used in dry season. In the northern India, when heavy rainfall takes place or snowfall takes place in the Himalayas, you have it act as a kind of source for the river water. Not only that, in the northern plains, the groundwater recharge is largely on the account of the rainfall through southwest monsoon, which again can be used in the relatively drier month. So that's why, both from the purpose of Indian agriculture, from the perspective of having water resources for various needs, including drinking water, this household consumption, industrial consumption, everywhere you require such kind of rainfall, southwest monsoon. So we can say that the entire rural economy to some extent is driven by what kind of pattern southwest monsoon exhibits in the particular year as such. Now 2026 is the year where there was a lot of concern regarding El Nino. El Nino, we know, is described as the warming that we see in the eastern part of Pacific near the South American coast. So some years what happens after every 5 to 7 years of interval, what we see is that there is unusual warming in the eastern Pacific Ocean. That unusual warming is what we call as El Nino. And there is a direct link between El Nino and the Indian monsoon. It is observed that whenever you have El Nino, the Indian monsoon generally becomes weaker in nature. And World Meteorological Organization also has issued warning that the conditions this year is ripe to give rise to El Nino. That means there is a possibility that monsoon rainfall we would receive in India this year would be relatively lower in volume. National Ocean and Atmospheric Administration, organization of US that largely studies ocean atmosphere atmospheric system, they also have said there's a high probability of El Nino occurring this year. And not only El Nino, this year there's a possibility of a super El Nino. Now super El Nino simply means that, for example, how did we define El Nino? So this is South America, and here you have the warming that is taking place in a particular area. So this warming is what we call as El Nino. If the extent of warming is greater than usual, higher than usual, generally if the sea surface temperature rises by more than 1 to 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to its normal temperature, we can say this is the super El Nino, much more stronger than usual El Nino, and this is the expectation this year. So all these have been taken into account by the Indian Meteorological Department, which is largely responsible for prediction of weather systems in India. So it has expected that below normal rainfall we would experience in this year. Now, below normal rainfall means how much? So based on the data, it suggests that we will receive only 92% of average annual rainfall that we generally receive if monsoon is normal. For example, if entire India receive 100 centimeter of average annual rainfall, this year due to the El Nino or super El Nino effect, we are going to record only 92 centimeter of rainfall. 92 centimeters of rainfall, 92% of the average. So what is going to be the impact? Obviously, the probability of drought increases because many areas which are largely dependent on monsoon rainfall to feed water supply through river system, channels, canals and all that, 35% of the probability is that they would face drought-like situation. And we know that, as we have discussed in previous slides, majority of the Kharif crop, they are dependent upon the amount of rainfall they receive during the southwest monsoon season. So if they are receiving less rainfall, there is a possibility that the crop productivity for the Kharif crop would be lower than usual, and that to some extent would also threaten the food security in India, and overall agricultural income of farmers can be impacted. That's why we're talking about that from food security perspective, from the rural economy perspective, this can be a dangerous situation. Now, water scarcity concern is there as well. We have discussed both in the peninsular part of India and the northern part of India. Water scarcity can be one of the outcome. Major concerns: agriculture sector is facing a greater extent of vulnerability. Drought-like conditions, as we have seen, can develop especially in the central part of India, or for example, when talk about the leeward side of Western Ghats, where you have the southern Maharashtra, northern Karnataka, Vidarbha region we know about, Malwa Plateau, you go to the Bundelkhand Plateau, Chota Nagpur. So these areas have probability of having this drought-like situation. Indo-Gangetic drying trend would continue because one of the major problems we are facing in the Indo-Gangetic plain is the over extraction of groundwater that has led to rapid decline in the groundwater level, that is further amplifying the crisis related to the water resources. Economic impact on farmers, as we have seen, and that's why taking these all into consideration, we need to be prepared for this particular year from the perspective of monsoon. Now, second topic we have discussed about is the SMILE mission. Now, SMILE mission is very important mission because it is the first Europe-China joint space mission, and it is to study the Earth's magnetic shield. So let us try to understand what is the objective and what is the magnetic shield and all. So first of all, it is joint mission launched by both Chinese space agencies as well as the European space agencies. The name of mission is SMILE. The mission was launched on 19th of May, last week itself, and it was launched by a vehicle that is called as Vega C, the rocket that would carry the satellite in the orbit is called as Vega C, and the aim is simple: to study the Earth's magnetic shield. Now, if you look at this particular picture, it should be understandable that Earth is surrounded by magnetic field, and this magnetic field is very, very significant for the life form to exist on the Earth. These magnetic field provide us protection against solar storms, solar flares, coronal mass ejection, lot of high energy discharge that we see coming from the sun. If this magnetic field were not present, Earth would convert into a kind of burning ball equivalent, we can understand, temperature of Earth would rise by hundreds of degrees of Celsius, and life would almost cease to exist. So that's why we have to have a good understanding, in-depth understanding of how Earth's magnetic field works. Now, what is the objective of mission? Objective is first to capture X-ray images of magnetosphere. What is magnetosphere? Again, if you look, suppose this is the Earth, and as we know that inside the Earth we have three layers: crust, that is the uppermost layer, then you have mantle, and then you have the core. So the core is, outer core more specifically can say, is in the liquid phase. Because outer core is a liquid phase, it is believed by the scientists that the materials that you have, especially ferromanganese material, iron, manganese, cobalt, nickel, all these material are in the molten phase. They keep on moving between upper part to lower part, between outer core to inner core, and this movement itself generates electric current. And this electric current is the reason why Earth is surrounded by a strong magnetic field as such. Strong magnetic field we can show like this, because Earth can be considered as acting like a giant bar magnet. Bar magnet means here you have the northern magnetic pole, here we can say you have the southern magnetic pole. So all the magnetic field lines, they are converging along these pole areas, north magnetic pole and the south magnetic pole. And then the entire region up to where the magnetic field of Earth extends out in the space is what we can refer as the magnetosphere as such. Similarly, Sun also has a magnetosphere. Sun's magnetic field also extends outward, far away from the Sun itself. So Sun, Earth has a magnetosphere. Thus, capturing first such X-ray images of magnetosphere is the objective of this mission. Study interactions with solar wind. As I told you that Sun continuously sends a strong beam of high energy particles, also referred as solar flares or coronal mass ejection, and majority of them are deflected away by the magnetic field of the Earth. Some of them get trapped in the magnetic field and they begin to collect near the polar areas. As they begin to collect near the polar areas, they interact with the gases that you have in the atmosphere, such as nitrogen and oxygen, and they cause the gases to burn. This burning is what you would have heard about in the polar areas. You will witness a very this well-known phenomena called as northern lights, also referred as aurora. So basically, how our magnetosphere is interacting with the solar wind, that is the objective of this mission, to understand in more detail. Observe Earth defensed against the solar particle, because as we have seen that Earth's magnetosphere is defending us. It is acting like kind of, if you imagine a shield that is covering the entire Earth, and whenever solar storm, solar flares comes out, it basically deflects them and protect us against such kind of high energy particles. Monitor charged particles from the sun, and also to improve understanding of the weather in a space. Now we know that humans from very long period of time have been a space-faring species. We can say we have went to moon. We also are trying to understand the planets such as Mars, and we have sent many telescopes such as Hubble Space Telescope, James Webb Space Telescope, to understand space universe in more detail. So while we are trying to understand space, it is also important we try to look at the kind of weather that prevails in the space around Earth, specifically due to the activity going on the sun's surface. Now, sun many times sends a lot of high energy particle, which many times can be harmful for Earth itself, such as solar flares, solar storm, CME, coronal mass ejection, the outermost layer of sun. It is also a type of mystery. If you try to think, coronal mystery it is referred as, because generally as you move from the center of sun to the outermost part of sun, temperature keeps on reducing. At the center of sun, temperature is about 15 million degrees Celsius. By the time you reach the surface of sun, it reduces to about 5,500 degrees Celsius. But when you go further out, you find yourself in a layer called as corona. It is very thin layer, only visible during the solar eclipses. And in the corona, the temperature is not only high, it is tremendously high. So here temperature significantly increases in the range of 1 to 3 million degrees Celsius. So such coronal temperature causes ejection of again plasma, high energy particles, ionized particles, and they enter into the Earth's outer atmosphere, where they result into aurora. And thus, because of this all phenomena, space weather to some extent is also disturbed, and that can have impact on the satellites and communication system, on which we to a large extent today depends upon. Because when such a strong beams, right, you have the high we can say kind of electromagnetic pulse that is being sent out from sun. When it interferes with electrical electronic components of the satellite, it can cause them to basically get this knockout from the orbit, and also can cause overall disturbances in their functioning as such. Now, Earth, as we discussed, is protected by magnetosphere. Strong magnetic field covers the Earth from all around, and that's why when the solar flares, suppose when it comes, it causes also the change in the overall shape or dimensions of the Earth's magnetosphere. So when it is subjected to strong solar flare, the Earth's magnetic field becomes something like this. The other part will have a kind of elongated structure, and this part kind of get compressed, and that's how basically the entire solar storm is able to move away from the Earth without disturbing it significantly. Prevents harmful radiation from reaching to the surface of Earth. You can imagine that the sun's major insolation, such as ultraviolet radiation itself, is so harmful even with such a low frequency, such a high frequency, and these radiations are having much more higher frequency than UV radiation. So if they will be able to reach the surface of Earth, obviously it would cause the extinction of the life form. Protects atmosphere from the erosion, because if you have a strong solar pulse coming from the sun, it can also, if it is able to reach nearby the Earth's surface, it would cause the entire atmosphere to be stripped off. Actually, if you look at the geological history of Earth, the first atmosphere was made up of hydrogen and helium, but we lost that atmosphere. Why did we lose it? One of the reason is because of the strong solar flares, solar storms that were reaching the Earth's surface, because magnetic field of Earth in the early stage of its evolution was not that strong, was not properly developed. So it is because of the Earth's protective shield, life on the Earth is possible, and that's what the mission is trying to do. Auroras and space interactions, if you look, solar particles, we know they interact with magnetosphere. This is the picture of aurora. So as you can see here, you have largely two major gases, nitrogen and oxygen. So depending on at what altitude these gases are burning, you will see generally green or pink color of aurora, kind of moving curtain like shape, we can say, of light. So solar particles interact with magnetosphere, creates auroras. Auroras also called as northern lights and southern lights, depending on which hemisphere you're talking about. And also they are called as dancing light because they have dancing or moving curtain like appearance. Visible near the polar areas, because that's where magnetic poles are located, and because the magnetic pole is the region where majority of these solar particles are concentrated around. So SMILE, the mission that is launched by China and European Space Agency, is expected to capture the full interaction that takes place between the atmospheric gases in the polar areas and the solar particle. And this also becomes important because it is the first ever deep space observation mission that we have launched. Now, what is the other importance of SMILE? So, better prediction of solar storms, because if we know that when solar storms is expected to take place, we can be well protected, we can be well prepared. And it is also believed that if a strong solar flare and storms are able to reach close to the Earth, it can cause havoc on the power distribution systems also. Electrical substations and the transformers can be fried upon, and the entire electrical sector can be jeopardized. Early warning system for space weather we can develop based on the data that we collect from this mission. Protect satellites and GPS system. Imagine that if we are not able to bring back the satellite on, the entire communication itself will be disturbed, and also navigation would be disturbed. And today, to a large extent, no matter which mode of transportation you are using, you are using the GPS system itself. So if it goes offline even for short duration of time, you can understand the huge impact it will have on the entire economy, global economy itself. Safeguard power grids, as you discussed, are most vulnerable to the strong solar flares, as well as the airlines, which is largely dependent upon the GPS communication systems and also are flying in the upper part of the troposphere. Improves the safety of astronaut. For example, International Space Station, as we know, is continuously hosting 5 to 7 astronauts, and that's why if they are exposed to such harmful radiation, it can have huge impact on their adverse impact or effect on their health as well. So if you are able to understand these phenomena, you'll be able to improve or improvise the safety of astronauts. So if you again look at the basic features of this mission, positioned 1.21 lakh kilometers above the Earth. That means this is the Earth. The rocket would finally put the satellite in the orbit, and it would be about 1.21 lakh kilometers above the Earth's surface. Observe full age of magnetosphere, because that's where the magnetosphere comes to an end. So important to remember, the mission will not capture magnetosphere from inside, it will capture it from the outside. So it will have the entire visible or entire view of the Earth's magnetosphere. The mission is expected to continue for a period of 3 years. The payload has a weight of about 2,600 kilograms, and it uses X-rays and ultraviolet rays for the observation of the Earth's magnetosphere. If you look at the scientific instrument and cooperation that we are seeing in this mission, so 4 scientific instruments are on board. European Space Agency, as we have seen, is a participating country. It has developed soft X-ray measure, SXI. China has developed magnetometer. LIA as well as UVI, that is ultraviolet related, remote sensing and in situ observation it will do. And the most important from the perspective of the cooperation, you can see it is important as it is the first joint China-Europe space mission. That also makes it very interesting, and you should keep this in mind that SMILE mission is going to be one of the most important missions that we have seen in the recent years. Third topic is related to the recent statement made by Union Home Minister Amit Shah when he was on visit to the Bastar. Bastar is a region in Chhattisgarh. So in his March 30, basically in the recent speech, he has said that I proudly declare India is now Naxal free. Naxalism, as we have seen, was a major security problem or challenge that India has faced at least since 1970s. So almost for 50 years, we can say this was a problem we are facing, especially in the central and the eastern and southern states of India. So in this statement, Amit Shah declared that India is now Naxal free. The last bastion of Naxalism in India, that is in the central India and Chhattisgarh, has been eradicated, and that was the objective. That was basically the target that Home Minister gave to the security forces last year itself, that by 1st April 2026 we have to make India Naxal free, and now he is saying that we have achieved that goal. Announcement was made in Jagdalpur. Jagdalpur is in the Bastar. Bastar was one of the most important stronghold of Naxal leaders. Credit he gave to the security forces, especially if you look, the Central Reserve Forces was one of the major paramilitary forces who were involved in carrying out counter-Naxal or anti-Naxal operations since decades. Thousands of Jawans sacrificed their life to finally achieve this goal, and that's why it is believed that it can be considered as a historical milestone against fight against extremism as such. Extremism, simply we can say, is when people uses extreme action to fulfill their objective and goal, and in the extreme action, use of violence is also justified. That's how Naxalism used to portray itself. So that's why Naxalism also is referred as left-wing extremism. Actually, it is driven by the ideology of left-wing communist ideology. Sometimes it derives inspiration from, but more specifically, it is based on the philosophy or idea given by Mao Zedong, the first premier of the People's Republic of China. So 3 generations were affected, because overall, if you look, the lifespan of Naxal violence in India began somewhere in 1971 and then lasted till 2026. March 31, 2026, I told you was the deadline. Intensified anti-Maoist operations was carried out, and last year itself, security forces achieved a lot of, we can say, successes in their operation. For example, the killing of Basavaraju, one of the most senior most leader of the entire CPI Maoist, under which the entire Naxal groups were participating and working upon. So he was killed, and after that there was large scale leadership gap and deficit, we see, and that was taken advantage of security forces to put the final nail in the coffin of the Naxalism. Hundreds were killed in the fight, and many of them, when they felt that they will be killed also, they surrendered with the arms to police stations, police officers. The role of security forces, if you analyze, you have the DRG and the Cobra. Cobra was a special battalion created within the CRPF itself, called as Commando Battalion for Resolute Action, to fight in the anti-Naxal operation. Bastar was the epicenter, as we discussed, of Maoism, high-risk jungle warfare, because Naxals had this strategy which they used to call as TCOC, Tactical Counter-Offensive Campaign, where they used to carry out huge operations targeting police forces, targeting civilian infrastructure, targeting the government institutions and all that, just before the arrival of monsoon. And then when the monsoon set in, they used to retreat back in the dense forests and jungles, where the movement for the security forces becomes quite difficult. So that's why, if or whenever we decided that we have to finally eliminate Naxalism, there was no other option but to participate in the high risk jungle warfare. Families of martyrs were honored also in this program, and obviously security forces were praised for the bravery. Now, if you look at the India's security transformation in last 10-12 years, we can say that the major challenges we are facing or we have been facing can be classified into 3. These are 3 major challenges. Obviously, a lot of minor challenges we have, localized regional challenges we have, but one challenge that is that was impacting entire country to some extent is the militancy prevailing in the Jammu Kashmir region. Then we have the insurgency that prevails in the northeastern state of India, where majority of insurgent groups come from the tribal community who want either a separate state from the state which they are part of, or many of the extremist group even want to secede from India and they demand a separate nation or country for themselves based on the ethnic or tribal affiliations. So this has led to growth of insurgency in the northeastern region, and third was the left-wing extremism that was significantly reduced. Actually, if you look at data from early 2013-14, the Naxalism affected districts in India were more than 180. Right, Naxals were spread across 18 states of India. And if you look at data from 2024-5 itself, the number of Naxal affected districts have been reduced just to a dozen, 13 to 15, and only in the 2 to 3 states as such. And as per the recent statement by Ministry of Home Affairs, by this year we have been able to reduce that to zero. So now, because the security challenge and threat has reduced, government can put more emphasis and focus on development of these regions. Because again, if you try to think, Naxalism can only prosper if the local population to some extent are supporting their ideology. And one reason why local population support their ideology is because they feel that government is not doing enough for them. They feel that government is ignoring their interest, basic facilities, basic infrastructure is missing in those areas. So now definitely we have removed Naxalism from these areas, but if we want to maintain the status quo, if we want to ensure that Naxal and Naxal based ideology does not take a grip again in this region, we have to ensure that development work is carried out in the efficient and effective manner, and that's what government is focusing upon. And it is in this context, Home Ministry has come up with a Bastar development vision. 5-year development target is given for this area, where 70 CAPF development centers will also be instituted. CAPF again stands for Central Armed Police Forces. 370 government schemes will be delivered to the people living in this area. The basic infrastructure such as roadways, electricity, telecommunication, and to meet the financial need of the people, and also to financially include them in the entire institutional delivery system, we will also open lot of banking facilities in this area. Develop Bastar is develop India. That is what government believes in. Rehabilitation, tribal welfare, because many of these areas are populated by tribals. So 3,000 surrendered Naxals were rehabilitated. Government also launched surrender and rehabilitation policy, because government believe that many times youth are misguided by Naxal leaders. They join their cause, but after a few years they feel that they have been misguided. They are not fighting. Their fight is not just or right. So government provides them the opportunity that if they realize their mistake and if they are not involved in some this heinous crime or some killing of civilians or assassinations and all that, then they will be having a chance to surrender with the arms or without arms to police station, and then government will ensure that they are rehabilitated back in the society where they can lead a normal civilian life. 20 crore was spent in the rehabilitation plan. Skill development education. How do you rehabilitate especially youth population? You have to skill them, provide them a skill, provide them education, and that's how they can find some employment opportunities. That's how they can find some job for themselves and can take care of them and their families. Mainstream integration effort, it is an example of, and tribal welfare is being prioritized by government in these areas as such. So these are what we can consider is what government has done in the last couple of years as far as the left-wing extremism or Naxalism is concerned. Right, left-wing extremism, Naxalism, both are kind of a similar term. The reason why we call it Naxalism in India is because this entire revolution, rebellion, movement we talk about, violent movement, began in the Naxalbari village of the West Bengal. So that's why, because it began in Naxalbari, term began to be associated with it is called as Naxalism. Next is UAPA bail debate in Supreme Court, Delhi riots conspiracy case. So here Delhi police has raised the issue of conflicting judgment and ruling as far as the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act and the bail related to this act is concerned. This is a very, very important act to tackle all kind of security threat that the nation faces, whether it is related to LWE, whether it is related to Northeast insurgency, or whether it is related to militancy or terrorism. In these cases, UAPA is applied and the person can be put in the jail. Matter was linked to the Delhi riot. Delhi riot took place a couple of years back, and there was a large-scale conspiracy that was unearthed by the Delhi police, and bail players were being heard for Taslim Ahmad and Khalid Saifi. Police has sought consideration by a larger bench. Larger bench means the number of judges on the bench should be more than 3. So bail under UAPA. Now, first of all, the entire debate was hinged over the Section 43D, subsection 5 of the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. Now, there is a lot of amendment also we have made recently in this act. You should go through these amendments. What are the changes we have made to make it more effective to tackle the modern threats? The biggest question in the front of the judges was, can prolonged incarceration justify bail? Under UAPA, if some person is arrested and Still, police have not been able to gather sufficient evidences, have not been able to file a charge sheet. In that case, person is continuously being incarcerated, and so he has been incarcerated, let us suppose for 2 years, 3 years and all that. So that be considered as ground to justify bail under this act? The conflict was between the statutory restrictions and the personal liberty. Here, judges have said that even when you're talking about the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, the general principle in the Indian jurisprudence, judicial system is the bail is rule. It applies over this act itself. So this principle was under discussion. Can we apply bail is rule under UAP or not? Judges were saying that yes, we can apply it. Like for example, Justice Ujjwal Bhuiyan, he has questioned earlier bail denial ruling. He has stated that the denial of bail in the early cases cannot be justified, as the reference was made to Union of India versus K.A. Najib case. In this case, court has noted the delay in trial can justify bail if police or security forces or the investigation agencies are not able to submit enough proof and evidences. You cannot keep on incarcerating the person even if he is charged under UAPA, and that is based on the ruling made by a court in the UA, that is Union of India versus K. Najib. Reservations were expressed on denial of bail to Umar Khalid and Sarjil Imam also in this particular instance. Now, government was being represented by the Additional Solicitor General S.V. Raju, and he has highlighted the conflicting judgment. He has stated that if you look at the precedences that we have in front of us, the judgment seems to be conflicting. So he suggested that matter may require larger bench review, because if you have two conflicting judgment given by suppose one judge bench, in that case you can get it reviewed by 3 judge bench. If the conflicting ruling is from 3 judge bench, you can get it reviewed by the larger bench, that you can constitute 5 judge bench also. Constitutional bench is also recorded. They said special laws like UAPA reduce normal presumption of the innocence. That is what is the government stand, that when anyone is charged under Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, it is a very serious act apply over such kind of situations where the threat to the national security is seen, is believed to be there, and thus normal presumption of innocence should not be applied as in the general law. He also claimed that recent ruling may not reflect the correct legal position when the bail is being granted. Bench responded to ASG's comment by saying, bench was again led by Justice Arvind Kumar and P.V. Varle. So it was 2 judge bench. Court questioned whether coordinate bench committed an error when they granted bail to the accused in the case of UAPA. Then in that case, Additional Solicitor General Raju has sought more time to study the Andrabi judgment. That was a recent judgment, and the next hearing was scheduled for May 22 as such. Now, if you look at the related cases in the background, January 5th, 2026, bail was granted to 5 accused in riots conspiracy case. They were also charged under UAPA, but bail was denied to 2 individuals, Umar Khalid and Sarjil Imam as such. Ahmad and Safi later approached Supreme Court for relief, and Andrabi judgment became a central reference point even in this particular discussion as such. Now, no matter whatever is the outcome, what is the broader significance of this entire discussion? That's what we have to focus upon here. So, major debate is between 2 things. First is how to ensure a balance between ensuring that the security of state is not compromised, right? And also to ensure that the liberty granted to every individual, every citizen of India is also exercised as it is a constitutional right. It could redefine bail standard in the UAPA cases. So whatever is the judgment that will come in this case, it would redefine the bail standard. Larger bench may settle the conflicting interpretations also. So if we have a 3 judge bench, whatever ruling they give can become a final ruling and can act as a precedence in the later cases also, which you will see where accused is being charged under UAPA, is being continuously incarcerated for long period of time, and there is a clear delay in the trial proceedings. Outcome thus may impact future anti-terror law cases as well. So this is what the entire discussion was hinging on. Then next we have is Operation Rage Pill. A recent operation was launched, and based on the government report, Indian agencies, security forces talk about, they have achieved first ever seizure of a drug that is popularly called as Captagon. Captagon, the total worth of this drug is believed to be 182 crore, and this entire busting of drug is achieved through the Operation Rage Pill. This is the statement made by the Union Home Minister of India. So let us try to understand 2 things. First of all, what is Captagon drug? And second, what is Rage Pill and how effective is it? So the Narcotics Control Bureau, the main anti-drug, anti-narcotics agency of India, it has intensified its anti-drug crackdown. It is to ensure it, Operation Rage Pill was launched, and under this operation, India has achieved its first seizure of the drug called as Captagon. It is also believed that this Captagon drug is coming from the West Asia, then it is coming through the Golden Triangle as well as Golden Crescent on the borders of India. Golden Triangle basically is three countries in the northeastern region of India, made up of Myanmar, Laos, and Thailand. And this is believed to be one of the major drug network around the Southeast Asia. And as we share a long border with Myanmar, it is believed that a lot of drugs are entering through the Myanmar border to the states such as Mizoram, Manipur, and all that. So the focus was not only to bust the drug trafficking ring operating within the country, but also to target the transnational syndicates, because without transnational syndicate targeting, you cannot achieve a what you can call as the effective outcome in such operation. Now, the drug that we have busted is called as Captagon. So, what is Captagon? It is a highly addictive psychotropic substances. It stimulates your CNS, and CNS is your central nervous system. And originally, it was referred as phenethylene. So, phenethylene, and now the most common popular name used is the Captagon. It is not a new drug. It is not new synthetic drug. The drug was developed somewhere in 1960s, and that time it was used even for medicinal purposes, curative purposes, such as treating ADHD, right? Then apart from that, you have narcolepsy. So treatment of ADHD, treatment of narcolepsy, attention deficit this activity disorder, that is ADHD and narcolepsy, because again the drug stimulates the central nervous system. But later on, it began to be misused for the abuse and illegal users began for this particular drug, and then Captagon began to be used as an illegal synthetic cocktail as well. It was then mixed with other well-known drugs such as amphetamines or methamphetamines. Meth, it is also called as crystal meth, it is called as. Not only that, then it began to mix with caffeine and fillers as well. And because it was lower in price, cheaper in price, many of the user began to use it as it was a cheap recreational stimulant. Also, people are using it to go in the state of trance. People are using it to remain awake for extended duration of time, and also face hallucinations and all this. And thus, in the Gulf nations, it was reported to be widely abused in the early year. Now, many times this drug is also referred as jihadi drug. Why jihadi drug? Because it is seen that many of the extremist groups operating in the West Asia, operating in the other part of Asia, were continuously using it. In the 2013, 2014, we saw the rise of ISIS in the Syria, Iraq, all these regions, the Islamic State of Iran, Iraq and Syria, as they used to call themselves as. So the militants of ISIS were also believed to be using the same Captagon drugs. The reason is because it creates euphoria, and it also suppresses fear and fatigue, and that's what these extremist groups and the leaders and the we can say their members were aiming for. So not only that, because they have to be attentive, they also use this drug to enable prolonged wakefulness. They can stay awake for continuously 2 to 3 days as such, and that's why the drug also is popularly referred as jihadi drug, associated with the jihadi groups, extremist groups. Now, because it is the Syria where we saw the rise of ISIS, it became the global production hub of this drug, because not only the militants and extremists were using it for their own consumption, they were also synthesizing this drug and were trafficking it across the world through their drug trafficking network to generate revenues to carry out their operation, to fund out their terrorist operation as such. So gradually it converted or transformed into what we can call as the multi-billion-dollar illegal trade empire, right? So when we think that where do the terrorist groups get their funding from, this is one of the major sources of funding for the extremist group, drug trafficking, most lucrative business which they participate in. Regional conflict also was funded by the revenue generated by the sale of these drugs. So also this drug is called as poor man's cocaine. Again, in the beginning I told you, this is a cheaper alternative. Cocaine is relatively costlier. Not every user can afford it, and that's why they switch to Captagon. Major Middle East trafficking route is seen continuously transporting this drug from west to east. Legal status of Captagon, if you look, it was banned globally in 1980s under the UN Convention and Schedule 2 as such. The reason was simple, because the drug has high abuse potential. The example of this we already have seen. Legitimate production was stopped finally in 2009. And as far as the government of India or the law or rules, law or legislation of India is concerned, it has been made illegal also under the NDPS Act 1985, that is Narcotics, Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act 1985. So if you are using this drug, if you are storing and distributing this drug, you can be charged under NDPS. Himachal's anti-chitta model is being used also by NCB here. Himachal Pradesh was seeing a lot of abuse of by the youth population, especially of drug in recent years. So they began to launch a strategy called as anti-heroin. Heroin was one of the most used drug in Himachal Pradesh. So anti-heroin state strategy, which they called as anti-chitta strategy. And in the first time, the state of India began to fight this drug abuse and use, not by focusing on the major centers of production, major centers of use such as urban areas, but they focused on panchayat level. They began to map at the panchayat level the user and abuser of these drugs, the trafficking and operating at the local areas, people who are involved in this distribution network and all that. So they went to the grassroots level, and that's why it became a very effective strategy to fight against the drug abusers. Plus, the state then began to zone the entire area under red, yellow, and green, depending on the severity of drug abuse and use problems. Then, once you understand that this is your entire state, these areas are where the drug problem seems to be much more greater in extent, amplified in extent, you would focus more on those areas, and that's when the government launched the targeted surveillance system. So those places, those village panchayats of Himachal Pradesh, which were in red zone, they were targeted extensively. Drug users were targeted. They were sent or they were encouraged to participate in the therapy as such. And then also people who were selling and the buying of drugs, involved in selling and buying of drugs, they were also targeted there. Grassroots anti-drug campaign, that's the significance of the Himachal's anti-chitta model. So the key feature of model was the NDPS Act was being enforced. 51 crore assets were confiscated. So not only people were put behind the bar, but also the money which they have, resources which they have generated by involving themselves in drug businesses, the properties which they have built over several years, all of them was confiscated. Drug test and police recruitment was also carried out, and 1,000+ anti-chitta volunteers were created who were able to provide information to the law enforcement agencies at the local level, at the grassroots level, and they acted as intelligence input. They acted as a source of intelligence, or we can say eyes and ears of the government. Panchayat awareness committees were created to handle this crisis at a localized level, regional level, and that's the reason why the model is being emulated in other part of India also, as seems to be very effective in nature. With reference to southwest monsoon, now if you look at few questions from the discussion that we have had for this week, southwest monsoon and El Nino, consider the following statements. El Nino generally suppresses monsoon rainfall over India. Normal date of monsoon onset over Kerala is June 1. Northwest monsoon is primary rainfall season for most part of India. So first is correct, because El Nino causes warming of the Pacific Ocean that clearly causes that can cause deficit rainfall over India. Normal date we have seen is June 1. This year we are expecting early onset. Northeast monsoon is not the main rainfall season, it is the southwest monsoon. So correct answer would be B, 1 and 2 only. Then with reference to the SMILE mission, the first China European Space Agency mission, which of the following statements are correct? Joint mission between China European Space Agency, correct. The mission aims to capture X-ray images of Earth's magnetosphere, correct. Mission will be positioned near the Sun-Earth Lagrange point. One of its objective is to improve forecasting of solar space, solar storms and space weather disturbances, right? So all the options given are correct here. Now with reference to Captagon, recently seen in news, consider the following statement. Captagon was originally developed as a treatment for ADHD and narcolepsy. That is correct, because we have seen that it used to stimulate the central nervous system. That's why doctors were using it. Syria is considered a major global hub for illegal Captagon production. That is correct. We have seen the rise of ISIS. There we have seen the use by these militants of the drug, and also selling for generating revenue. Captagon is legally permitted in India under the NDPS Act. No, obviously it has been declared as illegal drug, and you can be arrested and charged under NDPS Act if you are using and distributing this drug. So correct answer will be A, 1 and 2 only. So that's all for this particular week current affairs. Thank you very much.